Welcome everyone, and thank you to those joining us live and to those listening in afterwards. I'd also like to warmly welcome our guest today. This is episode 25, Medicine Supply Disruptions and Shortages During the Pandemic. This webinar is by FIP Young Pharmacist Group, FIP Industrial Pharmacy Section, and FIP Drug and Manufacturing Special Interest Group.
So, hi everyone, my name is Clement Haig, and I'll be a facilitator with Gerard today, and I'm a FIP Young Pharmacist Group Drug Delivery and Manufacturing SIG Liaison.
I'm Gerard Lisi and the YPG Industrial Pharmacy Section Liaison and also the YPG Cebu Chapter President. So we'll be your facilitators for this webinar. So welcome to this FIP special online program on COVID-19 as part of the program Responding to the Pandemic Together events. So the webinar's aims are listed here as follows. And if you have any ideas on webinar topics or any topics that we should feature, if you'd like to share your story on dealing with pandemic, please email lina@fip.org.
So as a reminder, there are some important links and resources available, made available by FIP. So there's a FIP COVID-19 information hub available at fip.org/coronavirus, and also a FIP Facebook group called COVID-19 and Pharmacy. So feel free to join this to discuss about anything COVID-19 and pharmacy related with fellow pharmacists and pharmaceutical scientists around the world.
Okay, some announcements for this webinar. Please note that this event will be recorded, live streamed on FIP Facebook profile, and will be freely available. So to those listening, please feel free to send your questions through the question box, and we will be picking those up throughout today's session.
So we organized this webinar and we had this learning objective. So it's to describe the differences between supply disruption, low stocks and shortages, list the main medicine and healthcare product affected, explain the potential impact of these issues, and outline different strategies developed by different governments throughout the world. That's why we have speakers from different regions.
Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to all of you our event chair moderator for this webinar, Mr. Ulf Hansson. So Mr. Ulf has more than 15 years of experience as a management team member of MSD, primarily working as External Affairs Director, Director of Policy and Communications. He has an educational background as a pharmacist, and since 2018, he is the president of the Swedish Pharmacists Association. He is also the current president of the FIP Industrial Pharmacy Section. So let's call in our event chair, Mr. Ulf Hansson.
Thank you, Gerard. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you that have joined. And again, welcome to today's webinar on medicine supply disruptions and shortages during the pandemic. And this webinar is part of FIP's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is relevant and rational that different measures are used in different countries as conditions and legislation differs. However, much too often, these differences are criticized by media without any scientific analysis. In my opinion, we should instead see these differences as opportunities to learn more. By doing so, we will gain new insights and ideas that can be used to further improve the situation locally. Because if we all do the same, then what will we learn? Today we have such an opportunity to learn. The pandemic is truly global, and therefore FIP as a global organization is ideally placed to discuss and compare actions and measures between countries and continents. This has always been a strength for FIP, and it is now more evident than ever. I'm looking forward to an interesting presentation by our 4 distinguished panel members, good discussions, and not least challenging questions from all of you. Now, let me first introduce our first speaker, Dr. Prosper Haig. Dr. Haig is a doctor of pharmacy, a graduate of the University of Paul Sabatier in France. Dr. Haig has more than 33 years experience in logistic and supply chain for drugs in Africa. He is at the head of an industrial pharmaceutical company, management team, and important contribution in generic drugs conception in Cameroon. Dr. Haig, we are eager to listen to your presentation. Don't forget to unmute, Dr. Haig.
Okay. I'm very happy to be with you this afternoon to be part of this special webinar. I'm happy on the behalf of African Forum to be with you and to speak on behalf of my continent. Next. Main points to be highlighted here are next. Okay, COVID-19 has been a very big issue for Africa, even though the population is young. Africa is mostly affected by the issue of disruption and shortages, because about 90% of drugs are imported. In the short term, the main issue in Africa is the access to quality assured medicines, tests to treat the symptom of COVID-19. Significant shortages of other essential drugs have been materialized. And at the same time, there has been a rise of substandard and falsified medicines, which have been introduced in many countries. Next. Some shortages area which have been identified are hydroxychloroquine, chloroquine, azithromycin, dexamethasone, antiretroviral, insulin, hypnotic, anesthetic, all products used for intensive care and oxygen. All those products were lacking, are still lacking. Next. In our continent, we have lack of manufacturing capacity, apart from few countries like South Africa and North African countries and Egypt. We have shortages of raw materials, political instability, and profitability issues. Other factors include delays in awarding tenders by suppliers, absence of national contracts on the regional code list of medicines, and also the failure of supply to meet the demand. At the end, the difficulty to pay the supply, difficulty of payment. Next. There is also challenges with the lack of digitalization of the management system used by the hospital, mismanagement of national procurement bodies, and manufacturing and quality problems also. Next. Action taken by decision makers. Progress are already observed in many countries. The situation of the pandemic has pushed the decision makers to think about local production. Many countries are working now to reduce the importation of some essential drugs in the future. For example, Ethiopia, South Africa, and recently Cameroon have developed national strategies and manufacturing roadmaps that address common pitfalls, which such as sourcing active ingredients, addressing financial barriers, and improving quality in line with international standards. And this plan are starting to be translated in specific gains. South Africa and Egypt are beginning the production of active ingredients locally. Ethiopia, meanwhile, is developing a pharmaceutical manufacturing industrial park to spur national and regional manufacturing activities. Next. Other action taken by decision maker, like in Nigeria, where the central bank has decided to stimulate the sector by extending line of credits to local manufacturers. In addition, at the level of African Union, recently, in collaboration with CDC, Center for Disease Control, they have announced intervention to rapidly respond to supply and policy gaps, including medical products. As part of this effort, UNICA, which is the UN Economic Commission for Africa, and AFEMS Bank have compiled a list of 50 local pharmaceutical companies which have the capacity or have shown interest in supplying priority products. Next. The last action taken by decision maker are monitoring and support the future use of computerized inventory management system in some countries to reduce medicine shortages. Cameroon empower and encourage local production of hydroxychloroquine. Procurement mechanism is being developed by UNICA, Pharma, which is the Federation of African Pharmaceutical Manufacturer Association, in collaboration with WHO. Next. The last action taken by decision makers are the promotion of AMA, African Medicine Agency, a continental effort to harmonize medicine regulation. And at the end, the integration of herbal medicines and traditional medicine, like in Madagascar and Cameroon with Archbishop Samuel Kleda. These are examples that has to be followed, observed and followed by us. Next. In conclusion, developing or scaling African pharmaceutical capacity will help to provide sustainable access to quality medical products and increase health security during pandemic like COVID and beyond. African countries should improve cooperation and trade within the continent. Harmonization of regulation should continue. The support of FIP is important for advocacy for access to treatment, to address the issue of shortages at international level for the international community. It's really unacceptable to have a part of the world with effective treatment and the other part of the world without treatment. Our vision is in FIP, the new vision is trust, solidarity, and action. I think on that field, we can do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haig. Now let me introduce our second speaker, Mr. John Alexis Sepulveda Mora. Mr. Mora is a pharmacist with experience in regulatory affairs for pharmaceuticals and related products in Colombia. He's a former executive director of the National Board of Pharmacists in Colombia, and is now the CEO of the CHAMI Business Group. Mr. Mora, we look forward to your presentation.
Very thanks to all. First, and to the FIP for this invitation. Next, please. And we talk in the next minutes about Colombia as a case study of the America region to get the different measures to avoid the possible shortage of medicines for attend the different patients of this pandemic. In this moment, we tell about Colombia, but the measures is similarly in the most countries of Latin America. And the situation is very similarly at the situation of the African continent, as said the Dr. Prosper. I told about 3 different stages. If Colombia has different measures to avoid the possible shortage. Next, please. Next. Well, the America region is a very autonomous region. We have different income countries, but Colombia is an upper middle income economy, and we have a system of health based in the Colombia social security system. This security system is regulated by the government, but has a system of secures for get the assistance to the people. The country has a national regulatory agency, CAILE de INVIMA, and the INVIMA approves the marketing of all products that have impact on public health, as medicines, natural products, cosmetics, foods, and other related products. In Colombia, the INVIMA, as national regulatory agency, has 2 conditions to produce medicine and related products. You first needed an approval to produce, and then you get an approval to market. With that, the National Regulatory Agency has a system of surveillance and pharmacosurveillance. Why? Next, please. I have problems with my computer. Yeah. Well, first, in Colombia, we has the produce to avoid the transmission of disease COVID. In this category has the produce as disinfectant solutions and other products classified as medical devices, as the mask. And with these products, the government has the decision to get a reduce of the condition to get the approval to produce this kind of products. And then when the companies produce these products get a very reduced system for get the approval to market. And with that, the government has the government is fine to avoid the possible shortage of this kind of products. Next, please. In the next category, what? Sorry, I have problems with my computer. I can see, but in the next, please. I have problems. Well, in the next category, we need to say a difference to other countries. We don't have a specific treatment to the COVID-19. In this moment, the measure to treatment the patient is first, avoid the possible contacts, and then in the possibilities of the patient don't get to the hospitals. The measure is a symptomatic treatment based in the treatment of the principal symptoms of the disease with acetaminophen and other medicines for OTC, over the counter. Next, please. Right. In Colombia, in the three stage of attention of COVID-19 patients, we have the patient who need attention in hospitals. For that, the government with the National Regulatory Agency needed approval the different clinical trials for get specific medicines for treatment the COVID-19 disease. And in this topic in Colombia has in the moment 3 clinical trials in development. This clinical trial is from remdesivir, and other clinical trials is the Solidarity WU clinical trials, and other study in development is the study for plasma. Next, please. Next. Okay. In the unities of intensive care, for avoid the possible diffusion or shortage of medicines, in Colombia, we have a positive list of medicine with the system of health needed for attend the patients in the intensive care units. Next, please. Next. Okay. I don't have, I have. Next. Next. You can hear me? Okay, Clement, you can hear me?
Yes, we are on the last slide's conclusions now.
Yes. I can see the last slide.
This is last slide, general conclusions.
Next slide. But this is my last slide.
Yes, it is.
Yes, well, the conclusion is In this moment, in the America region, the countries has different measures to avoid the possible shortage. But the big problem is, but the countries has a small capacity or a big capacity for produce medicine, but we don't produce APIs. Without APIs, it's very complex for the government avoid the shortage of medicines, but we don't have the possibility to get the final produce without the active pharmaceutical ingredients and the excipients. For that, the government have the main efforts to get more uh, a more intensive supply chains for import medicine to the country to avoid the problem in the intensive care units. As in the meanwhile, the government has measured to get the more possibility to produce to avoid the possibility contagious of the disease. In this scenario, for Colombia, is very important has the solidarity of all the countries of the world, especially China and India as supplier of APEs. And in the same time, we need to get more capacity for produce the medicine we needed for get a good attention of patients. This is a very complex situation. This is a new situation with this disease, but this is not a new situation with the problem for shortage of medicines. In development countries, the problem of shortage of medicine for neglected disease is very common. But in this situation, like the conclusion is, we need to respond very fast, very accuracy, and very effectively for get a good attention of patient and reduce the mortality of this disease. Thanks to all, and I stay attentive for your questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mora. And now let me introduce our third speaker, Mr. J.J. Yaisilan. After completing pharmacy graduation, he entered pharma marketing in 1989. As a first-generation entrepreneur, he started his journey in 1999. Now he has created pharma verticals right from R&D, manufacturing of API and formulation, marketing, healthcare, and OTC. Mr. Yaisilan is the chairman of the Indian Pharmaceutical Association in this Industrial Pharmacy Division. Mr. Yaisilan, please give us your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, my fellow panelists, FIP facilitators, delegates, warm wishes from India. So I'm going to take you in next 10 minutes about the medicine supply disruption and shortages during the COVID-19. Let's go to the slide. So I am representing Indian Pharmaceutical Association, which is the premier association of pharmacists in India, which was established in 1939, which has over 13,000 members, and it has president right now Dr. Narti Narayana, and we have a 5 parallel division, and I am representing the industrial pharmacy division. There are educational division, hospital pharmacy division, community pharmacy division, regulatory affairs division. So Indian Pharmaceutical Association promotes the profession of pharmacist in India. We'll go into the topic. We'll go to the next slide. We all know that this global pandemic has put a lot of effect and impact on healthcare, which we are going to see. Before that, I would like to mention one slide where we all know across the globe, the impact of COVID-19 has put a lot of effects on the economy, unprecedented impacts on economy, and we are started seeing a lot of steep rise in the unemployment across the globe. This is going to have a direct as well as an indirect effect on the healthcare. Let us see how it is going to have. Let's move to the slide and our topic. Next slide, please. Yeah. So before going into the description, this pandemic has brought a lot of effects on healthcare systems. And we are seeing some new unprecedented methods. If you've seen that prioritization and increase of hospital space, we have seen in India, not only in India, across the globe, a lot of buildings, institutions, or on temporary sheds are all made as a hospital space because of the pandemic. And there was a new protocol emerged for treatment. A lot of trials going on here and there, like somebody says hydroxychloroquine works, somebody says ivermectin works. So a lot of new protocol emerging since the healthcare doctors or pharmacists is not aware what is the thing. Initially they said steroids should not be used, later dexamethasone was approved, a lot of new protocol emerged. Sudden importance of natural herbal medicines. In India, it happened. I understand it also happened from Africa for the previous speaker. It is called Siddha Ayurveda, all natural herbs. Actually, in India, in most of the places, it has been tried simultaneously with the allopathic drug. And ultimately, we feel the death rate is very less in India compared with most of the countries. More focus on prevention and immunity boosting. A lot of talks are going on, and the natural people want to prevent the disease. So the pharmaceutical markets, new segment is emerging on the immunity boosting side, particularly from the natural herbal sides. And of course, we have noticed also a rapid regulatory changes. The entire government, particularly regulatory department, was on their toes, approving a lot of new uses, new clinical trial, new drug, all those things. So we have seen a lot of regulatory changes, and we can see in the next slide the other impacts on the healthcare. See, we have seen the entire first time, not only the doctors or the health professionals, the entire citizens of every country are looking into the pharmaceutical industry for invention of a vaccine or new medicine. Everybody you interact asks what is that you are going to bring, when you are going to bring vaccines. So invention of new medicines and vaccines, multiple people are involved, right from the prime minister, presidents of various countries started talking on this. Preparedness for pandemic, that is very important. See, one is it is spreading so fast, everybody want to prepare for preventing it, also get ready for handling it. And also in China, we got news that the next wave started. So this is putting a lot of challenges. And one of the objectives of this kind of program and seminar is to understand ourselves, equip ourselves to face such challenges of next wave of pandemic. And most importantly, we have the entire global chain got affected. See, the supply chain, I want to take, this is my topic, I want to take more time on this topic, that is impact on India and China. The previous speaker also mentioned, which I will talk more. And see, what happened is this transportation, import and logistics cost increased to a new height. What happened is the transportation, it started from China, everybody knows. Most of the places, the flight is first stopped, then the movement of ships were stopped, all those things. And within the country also, the transportation chain was stopped, logistics was an issue. So the cost of transporting API or say finished product from one country or one place to another place steeply increased. There was the thin margins. In spite of that, the customers abroad or even in India, they will not accept any cost increase. This was a challenge to the industry people, and the major supply chain all got disrupted because of this. Mainly because of the ship and the air freight is stopped. And most importantly, the clinical trial landscape also got suffered because of this COVID issue. There was no new clinical trial happening except for COVID selective products. It was a challenge. That industry also was going down. So the clinical trial landscape also got postponed. Next slide, please. So I want to talk more on India and China, what happened. As we all know, in being Indian pharma industry is the pharmacy of the world, for a simple reason, we all know that this is the third largest producer of medicine by volume in the world, largest exporter of medicine, as we all know. We are exporting to over 200 countries, and in vaccines, every second vaccine taken in the world is manufactured from India. UNICEF recognized India as a global leader in supply engineering. Globally, around 10% of the volume produced is from India. Why I have put this slide is, we as a pharmaceutical manufacturer of India, we hold the responsibility of servicing 1.3 billion people of the entire country. Also, we have equal responsibility of supplying medicine over 200 countries. So, with a lot of supports and challenges we face, we try to fulfill this. One thing I want to mention and record here is, in spite of all challenges, we could supply for domestic requirement. Most of the places we satisfied it, and we tried to satisfy the export orders too, but it's not easy. We can see the subsequent slide what are the challenges we face. Next slide, please. So China, we all know, is a leader in API. India imported almost 68% of API consumption by value from China. So the problem started there. See, the infection pandemic started in China in December. From December onwards, the API supply from China got disrupted to India. So India is supposed to produce medicines for the rest of the world. And as a result, what happened is there was a lot of restriction in getting API from China. And actually, because of that, India could not export medicines also during January, February, and even March to some African countries and other things. Okay, highly reliant on China for fermentation-based APIs. China has the advantage of cost competitiveness in API, which we all know. Next, please. So, medicine disruption happened in 4 segments. First, manufacturing. I'm going to take this way: manufacturing, distribution, marketing, and finally in dispensing. Let us go to manufacturing in the next slide. So, manufacturing, as we all discussed, the active ingredient not coming from China because of the problem, pandemic issue started in China, later logistics issues, and even India stopped getting flights from China, ships from China. So those things created problem in getting API. And our own issues in formulation is because of the lockdown, what happened is the amount of people coming, though we are under essential category, we work, the amount of people coming into the facility reduced. Logistics issues is a problem. Most importantly, the supporting industries like a printer, a foil manufacturer, a capsule manufacturer, those people are all under lockdown, so they could not support the pharmaceutical industry. So because of all these things, the manufacturing disruption happened. Let's see, next slide. As far as marketing is concerned, the domestic marketing, first if I see, doctors, nurses, hospital, except COVID treating government hospital and COVID specialist hospital, most of the time, 2-3 months, the private hospitals are all closed, clinics are closed. There is no question of domestic marketing. So the entire marketing thing suffered, and as such, there is a new dimension. The challenge is emerging of digital marketing started, as well as if you see exports, the export also, lot of lagging behind happened. India could not supply medicines to most of the countries. We had some shortages. The Indian government put some restriction on exports, which thanks to the IPA and the IDMA, we could get appeal with the government, and we started within a span of 15-20 days. Next slide. Distribution. See, distribution is supply of medicine is the key. What happened is, what good thing happened in India is generally in domestic, let me talk first. Domestic, we normally have 2 months stocks in the transit. So the 2 months inventory, what distribution channel and pharmacy stocks which was there in the market literally helped us during that the core of pandemic. Those stocks helped for domestic people, so we could give most of our domestic requirement we could meet. But also in terms of export, the restriction on export and also import of raw material had an issue for us in supply, which we recovered faster. Next slide, please. So as far as dispensing and shortages, I would like to put this way. Regarding the COVID-19 products, we had initial challenges of hand sanitizer, say, personal protection equipment, all those things, mask, gloves. So still, Indian government had restriction on exports, but we could manage and supply to our domestic people. Regarding the acute therapy medicines, most of the products we could supply without any disruption, but there was a problem in some antibiotics like azithromycin and say cephalosporins like antibiotics and some painkiller. In chronic therapy, since we had a rack stock of distribution transit stock of 2 months, most of the anti-diabetic, antihypertensive drug for our domestic market we could give. But the challenge was the new drugs like immunity boosters, which is the entire country started taking vitamin C, zinc tablets. So we had a lot of challenges in producing such new immunity boosters drugs, natural drugs, all those things. So that was a real problem for us. Next slide, please. So the conclusion and challenges, if I see, the continuous lockdown created a lot of backlog for Indian pharmaceutical industry. We are supposed to produce medicines for most of the country. So the real challenges ahead us is, even today, all our country, most of the place we are under lockdown. People is an issue because we could not make everybody to work. Lot of challenges in spite of that, lot of backlog we are supposed to supply that is there. Normal processing won't work. We are looking for more automation, robotic kind of things. Definitely cost and quality is the strength of India. Along with access and affordability are the key. We are looking the routine normal process will work. We are looking for a lot of new way of achieving our targets. Controlling of transport and logistic costs will be a definite challenge. Even today, the logistics is not open to every country, particularly China to India and other Southeast Asian countries. So the cost on transport is improved, whereas the customer is not ready to absorb, which is a challenge which we have to find a way of coming. And new ways of working are essential. That's important. We need a lot of flexibility in R&D. Regulatory should be very faster, marketing and manufacturing. And definitely one important point, what I would like to record here is digital adoption and remote working would be a key in the days to come, because we don't know when this pandemic is really going to get over. So a lot of challenges still are there in terms of our commitment of fulfilling our supply of medicine to the entire world. So we are hoping to achieve that, and we'll pray to the Almighty to help the entire universe to come out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jayasedan. Excellent. Now let me introduce our fourth and last speaker, Mr. João Ferreira. Mr. Ferreira has a degree in pharmacy and joined the European Medicine Agency in 2014 as a procedure manager. Prior to joining the EMA, he worked in the field of regulatory affairs and pharmacovigilance consultancy. Since 2019, Mr. Ferreira is part of EMA's policy and crisis management team dealing with shortages and availability of medicines in Europe. Currently, he is also a member of the EMA HMA task force on availability of authorized medicines and the EU executive steering group on shortages of medicine caused by major events. Mr. Ferreira, we are eager to listen to your presentation.
Thanks, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for giving the EMA the opportunity to share a few considerations as to the response in Europe to medicine supply disruptions during the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, the continued availability of medicines, in particular those medicines that are used for patients with COVID-19, has been of critical concern for the EMA and also to its partners, the European Medicines Regulatory Network, also in light of the medical emergency presented by the pandemic. So I'll be already flipping through towards the next slide. So before going through the response to the pandemic in Europe in the field of shortages, I just wanted to give you a bit of a background and also context on how regulatory authorities manage shortages in Europe. So I wanted to start by highlighting that indeed improving the availability of medicines authorized is a key priority for the European medicines regulatory network, and that also one important element is that in the EU, most medicine shortages are dealt with at the national level by the national competent authorities. So it's also the responsibility and the remit of the marketing authorization holders and also manufacturers, which are required by the EU legislation also to inform regulators in the event of supply disruptions that may lead to shortages or market cessation. So primarily, the European regulatory network aims to minimize this impact of shortages on patients and also healthcare professionals by working with pharmaceutical companies on trying to resolve manufacturing or distribution issues, and also by trying to seek input from patients and also healthcare professionals, including also pharmacists, on the impact of medicine shortages to support also decision-making process. So as you can see on this slide, since 2016, a task force has been set up by the European medicines agencies and also the heads of medicines agencies in Europe, and has been looking at availability issues for medicines that are authorized but are not marketed, trying to improve then continuity of supply for both human and veterinary medicines across Europe. So I can also confirm that some of its key priorities also include trying to foster collaboration also with the various stakeholders and enhance communication of supply problems to the EU healthcare professionals and also patients. So it's important that by bringing together experts from the various EU member states, the work of the task force so laid the foundations for an improved EU approach in addressing medicines availability issues also during the pandemic. Before I go to the next slide, just to mention that also last year in April, the task force also established what we call a single point of contact network to try to improve sharing of information between the member states, the European Medicines Agency, and also the European Commission on shortages of critical human and also veterinary medicines. This also includes trying to share information amongst the member states on alternative medicines that might be available in other EU countries. But I'll be telling you more about the contribute of the use network also during the pandemic, more in detail in our last slide. So I go next to the following slide. So indeed, the number of shortages has increased in the past few years, and the issue has also been aggravated by this pandemic by many different factors. So we observed indeed that the pandemic has affected the manufacturing capacity and also the stability of the supply of many active pharmaceutical ingredients, in particular those that are produced outside of Europe. And this was also a result, as my colleagues also mentioned, of temporary lockdowns of manufacturing sites, which also led to manufacturing difficulties and affected the supply of medicines too, and also within the EU. There have been also travel restrictions, which impacted medicine exports. So there have been logistical issues that were caused by border closures, which also led to disrupted transportation networks and therefore not allowing medicines to move, for example, from country A to country B. There have been also export bans or restrictions imposed by a few countries in Europe, but also outside Europe. And here it's very important to highlight the role of the European Commission, who also published guidelines on the optimal use and rational use of medicines, stressing the need for national authorities to show solidarity through the lifting of export bans and also restrictions, also trying to ensure that essential medicines would be available in hospitals and pharmacies, and that national stockpiling would be avoided. So another important root cause, if not the most important, was the increased demand for medicines that are used to treat COVID-19 patients. So there's been a surge in demand for medicines that are used in hospital intensive care units, primarily noted for certain medicines like anesthetics or sedatives, also antibiotics and muscle relaxants, as well as for certain medicines that are used off-label for COVID-19 patients in ICUs. But I'll be talking about the ICE-POC monitoring system and its importance to monitor shortages for these medicines in Europe also in 1 minute or two. They're important to mention also that there have been also reports of stockpiling by hospitals and also individual citizens or at member state level. So a few EU member states observed a surge in demand during the beginning of the first wave of the pandemic, with an increased number of prescribed medicines that were collected in the pharmacies, leading then to hoarding of medicines by patients. And in this respect, to try to avoid shortages due to stockpiling, some member states have imposed restrictions on the number of packs that could be prescribed to patients or purchased by citizens, and also have temporarily conceded the limitation, for example, of online sales of essential medicines. So here also an important role for the national authorities on trying to fight misinformation that could lead to unnecessary stockpiling, and also which could be potentially triggered also by panic buying. So important role for national authorities also to promote the optimal use of medicines in hospitals, also by trying to adapt the existing hospital protocols or establishing new validated protocols to prevent the overuse of medicines, as well as providing the possibility to extend the expiry dates of certain medicines. So this already brings me to the final slide. So in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, the EMA has also gone beyond its legal remit. So EMA has been asked to take on the role of a central coordinator to actively support the member states when it comes to shortage prevention and management actions. Therefore, the EMA has initiated a number of activities. The first one being, as you can see on the slide, the setup of the EU Executive Steering Group on shortages caused by major events. Here, the mandate of this group was to provide leadership for urgent and coordinated actions trying to prevent and mitigate supply disruptions within the EU during the pandemic. So in the context of COVID-19, the group identifies and also coordinates EU-wide actions to try to protect patients when medicines in the are at the risk of supply shortage, for example, due to temporary lockdowns of factories in areas affected by COVID-19, or when travel restrictions impact shipments. So the group has also tried to ensure that patients and healthcare professionals across the EU are kept informed in a transparent manner about the risks and the remedial actions undertaken. So the EMA has published multiple also press releases that are available with the outcome of the decisions and actions also on the EMA website. Also important to mention that to support these concerted actions, the steering group also dedicates 1 hour of its weekly meetings also to try to exchange views with the EU pharmaceutical industry associations on current and also anticipated supply shortages. So also important to highlight another element, that is the fact that the EU Executive Steering Group has also set up in April, also in collaboration with pharmaceutical companies, what we call a fast-track monitoring system to try to prevent and mitigate these supply issues for a subset of crucial medicines that are used to treat COVID-19 patients, the so-called ICE-POC system, so the industry single point of contact system. So under this specific system, each pharmaceutical company appoints one single point of contact, the so-called ICE-POC, and reports to EMA and the affected authorities shortages of ongoing or anticipated shortages of medicines that are used in the treatment of COVID-19 patients, especially medicines that are used in hospital ICUs. And basically, EMA compiles this information received from the companies and shares it with the steering group for decision on EU level measures. So to finalize, also to mention that in the context of COVID, the EU-SPOC network, to which I also referred to at the very beginning, has also continuously shared information between the member states, the EMA, and also the European Commission on critical medicines, of shortages of critical medicines in the context of COVID-19. And also EMA has gathered information on medicines used for COVID-19 patients currently on shortages or at risk of shortages in the EU countries. And this information information has actually been used by the EU Health Commissioner to try to make a plea for industry to increase production of these medicines. In addition, also due to the export restrictions that have been imposed by the Indian government, also the EMA has collected demand data from the EU countries for 14 substances that were under export restrictions. And this demand data was then used by also the Health Commissioner in direct negotiations also with the Indian government. So after this first wave of COVID-19 infections in Europe, the EMA and also its partners continue to closely monitor the impact of the pandemic on the pharmaceutical supply chains into the European Union, and also maybe being mindful of the time. Overall, I would like also to conclude and mention that the current systems that we have in place allow to have an European central oversight of shortages for high impact COVID-19 medicines, but also helps us to monitor common issues or patterns also in anticipation of new supply issues and also in view of a possible second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic later this year. So perhaps I stop here and I would be happy also to take any questions. Over, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferreira. And as you said, now it's time to open up for questions. And I hope that we will have, and we do have a few minutes for questions, and that we have several questions from the audience. And of course, panel members are of course also allowed to ask questions to each other. And I see that at least we have one question for Dr. Haig in the Q&A. That says that I would like to know what herbal traditional drugs that are currently in study and what are the metabolites compounds that can be a possible treatment for the symptoms of COVID-19. So perhaps, Dr. Haig, if you could be starting this session.
Okay. I don't see the question.
It's number 5 on the Q&A.
Q&A. Okay. I think the first question about the capacity, Dr. Egg. Okay. I would like to know that herbal drugs are currently in study. What are the metabolites? No. I would say that these herbal, which are used in our country, I will speak about my country, Cameroon. We had the experience of an archbishop who is also a traditionalist who used traditional medicine. When the COVID came, he tried his potion is a kind of a liquid, a syrup, with some patients, and they were treated. The symptom disappeared. Now, what the government did is to help him now to analyze more his products and to see how those products are acting in the body of this patient, of the patients. And I cannot say directly what are the composition of the product now. The study is going on, and maybe in a few months we'll have all the data that we can share at the level of FIP.
Thank you. I see most statements. Well, I have a question for Mr. Ferreira. This ISPOC reporting system, is that something you're considering developing for wider use than just for COVID-19 going forward? You're mute.
Thanks a lot for the question. So currently, this icebox shortage monitoring system that we have developed in Europe is established for a subset of medicines that we use to monitor shortages of COVID-19 patients. So it's currently a subset, a list of substances that is currently established for 31 active substances in total. And for these 31 active substances, indeed, pharmaceutical industry has to report any ongoing or anticipated shortages to both affected authorities and the EMA. So this is actually what gives us the possibility to have this central oversight of shortages that are occurring at the moment also in the European region. When it comes to your question on whether this could be extended for monitoring and shortages of medicines that are non-COVID related, this is currently not being considered. So the scope currently is only medicines that are authorized and marketed in Europe for a subset of products that are used to treat COVID-19 patients. This is where we're focusing at the moment, and it's currently not envisaged to be enlarged to substances that are not used to treat COVID-19 patients. Over, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know how much time we are allowed to use. Gerard, could you advise us if we have time for more questions?
Yes, you can.
So do we have any?
Yes, I think we can entertain 2 more questions.
We have one question. If you can all panelists could read the most recent question to see which one of you wants to discuss this question on quality. If we have a volunteer. The one from Stefan Mühlebach. Can you see it? Okay, no volunteers. Do we have any more questions? Gerard, have you received any more questions from Facebook?
No, there were no questions on Facebook, but there's one question is how to deal with out-of-stock medications, both locally and internationally, used in COVID-19 patients. Example is a tocilizumab, currently no stock available internationally. Thank you. And it's from Maria Therese Legion.
Thank you. Anyone in the panel that wants to have a go?
Regarding not one drug, antiviral drug, most of the drug Indian companies are manufacturing and exporting across the globe. Thankfully, for most of the antiviral API, India itself is producing. So there is no dependency of China in most of the antiviral. So currently we are able to produce a lot of antiviral and we are able to supply to the African countries particularly and also to the rest of the world. Coming to the new drugs like remdesivir, around 4 companies have started manufacturing and a lot of companies are in pipeline. Soon those drugs would be also available for the entire globe, except the patented drugs. Few patented drugs which are used specifically in some acute conditions. Those drugs which are allowed to manufacture from India, most of the antiviral drugs will be able to supply to the globe without any problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I have a final comment.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks. The main concern to talk about FIP is, in one hand, you have the decision of the government to reduce the standards to approval, the produce and commercialization and marketing of products. But in the other hand, you have the possibility to reduce the quality of these final products. And with substandard products, you have a very big risk, especially in produce would provide the person the sensation of security as disinfectant solution or mask or other issues to avoid the transmission. For that, it's very important for the countries reinforce the system of surveillance of medicine and related products for treatment of COVID, for verify what is the quality of these products in the market. And if this product has the effect with the government fine to get products to the population. For that, it's very important, the quality. And this is a topic would not much people talk about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I wanted to add something about solidarity, cooperation, because what I've realized, and I will tell you something, an history. At the beginning of COVID, I asked two of my friends in countries that are well organized for production if they could send some hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. They told me that they cannot. Exportation at banned. What we have now is for our countries. We cannot send you anything. This is what we face really in this, and we realize that it's very difficult for a country which don't have, the countries which do not have industry to face pandemic, to face some epidemic, to face some disease. It is important for us to have industry in our country. It is important at the level of FIP to develop solidarity. I think at the our next meeting, I will insist on that. Solidarity with the members of the FIP, solidarity with the countries, India with Africa, China with Africa, Europe with Africa. We cannot stay like that, not doing anything. We have to do something for the cooperation to save many people, millions of people all over the world.
Thank you. That was a good comment to end this webinar. And I want to end with thank you all. Thank you for very good technical support, for great facilitators, for fantastic panelists, and of course all of you participants that have joined us over Facebook or via Zoom. So thank you very much. And you can find information on how you could access this webinar again on FIP's Facebook. And there are, of course, always more information that you can find at the FIP.org website. So thank you very much, and have a great day. Something I missed, Gerard? Or?
No, that's it. Thank
No,
you,
that's
Rolf,
it.
and
Yeah,
thanks
thank
to all the
Thank
panelists.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
Dad.
you. Goodbye.
Bye.